Hello, if you are watching this video, you know what it's about already. But what brings you here? Well, your manual choke isn't working, or at least not working reliably. Your automatic choke. All these Ford, the carbureted Ford Escorts and Lynxes and LN7s and EXPs, they all came from the factory with a automatic choke. And it is not the best of systems, especially today, because what causes these to fail, and I'll show you in a minute, but on the earliest ones, the 81s through 83s, they all had a single pin connector, and what it was is the female end of a bullet connector that so the female recipient of this, it would just slide onto a stud like this on here. They'll just be poking out in the middle, and that's what your wire connects to. And then as your car warms up, or as I should say, as the coil inside warms up from the current that is being put into it. So as 12 volts goes into this, the coil inside slowly warms up, and it moves a set of springs back. In doing so, will one, move your choke butterfly. If you have a 1.6, you'll have two here. If you have a 1.9, you'll just have the one. And then it'll also move your idle speed, depending on how warm it's getting. So we'll take this apart here. On the 81s to 83s, these are held in typically with just 3 screws. They're just all Phillips machine screws, kind of like this guy. They usually have round heads on them, but most of the time one of the 3, for whatever reason, is different than the other, although they all have the same thread. But the 84 on up carbs, they typically are riveted in. So what you have to do is drill out the rivet, and then once this is out of your way, you can go in there, keep drilling the rest of the way through the casting, and then either put in a new rivet or tap the hole to a septum a machine screw. That's your call. These aren't all that thick, so I'd avoid rivets. Only use plastic or aluminum rivets. Steel will just break this casting. I can almost guarantee it. And they are awfully small. So machine screws are preferred, and these being aluminum, sometimes you don't even need a tap for them. You just cut a couple slits on the end of this here, turns it into a self-tapper. As long as it's kind of snug in the hole, you won't have any issues with it. But yeah, once you do that, this guy comes off. This is the automatic choke unit, so inside is a heating mechanism of some sort. It varies because these 84s on up have a unit like this, and the 81s through 83s have a unit that's about half as tall. So it's only half as tall, and it's a little bit different. You still have a wound spring like this, but in the 81 to 83s, it's a little bit bigger in diameter, and then you don't see, or I don't remember seeing, this metal contact patch in the back, whatever that's for or does. I will have a video someday on doing everything you see here to 81 to 83. So we'll get there when we get there. And now you'll want to take off this ring. You will need this ring to mount your manual choke, and it would seem that it does not clear this clip. So that's something to keep in mind. Oh, there we go. Now I got it. A little bit of finesse, but you do need this ring. This ring is what's going to hold on your new cap. I use these Dorman kits, Dorman manual choke conversion kits, and they always come with 2 cups. You don't need the big one. The big one's of no use to you. The small one is what you need. And again, these 84 to 90s, they all have this red disc in here. The earlier ones, sometimes they have a disc in there, sometimes they don't. But The plastic cup that they supply you with goes right here. And then the ring that you took off, once this is all done, it goes back on. And then it looks like the way Ford had intended it. Kind of. So we'll set this to the side for now. Just know that you'll need the small one. And keep it in a safe place. You can pitch the big one, do whatever. You won't need it, use it, whatever. Same thing with your old choke. You won't be using that at all ever. So all that, no need. So getting down into here, this is what your choke butterfly is linked to. It's this guy. And a couple things to keep in mind here. I'll have to hold this kind of level for you guys because there is an important aspect to these. You can see, I'll try adjusting the level so you can see here. But back in there, you can see there's this one key sprig. And then over here, there's two of them. I'm sorry, it's really hard to see. I'll grab a flashlight here because you'll want to see this. This is fairly important. So, woo. So there we are. Now you can see that one sprig there. Try turning this down all the way. There we go. So now you can see that it has that step there. That's what controls your high idle. So when that moves down, I'll click it down. I have to move the throttle out to lower it. But once that moves down, that lowers your high idle speed. And it can still click down one more time, down to nothing. And actually click down a few different times. There is a total of, I'll just count it here for you. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, so 4 idle speeds. There's your warm idle, which you should have around 750 to 950 RPMs. Your step up, which will be about 1200 to 1500. And then the other one, it's a little bit bigger. That'll be 1500 to 2000. And then the top one there, you shouldn't ever really use that. That gets you up to $3,000. Which, yeah, definitely shouldn't ever use. But what controls that, we'll look inside here. Wish I had more hands, as always. But that is controlled by this plastic set, this plastic U set. So moving it up like so, it moves the sprigs down here into the high idle position, allowing it to stay up like this. But when this moves back down, we lay it flat, gravity will should drop it. Sometimes it does get stuck. Gravity should drop it, and your idle will go back down. If you give it a little gas, it'll drop back down. So now it's at high idle, give it a little gas, set on the level, and then it goes back down to its low idle speed. And then to set your high idle, this is something you'll get used to as you're driving your car with your manual conversion, or actually even with your automatic choke. When you first get in the car, your choke will be off, and then before you start the car, you'll move the choke up all the way. And then you'll start the car, give it a little bit of gas, and then you'll try getting it up to like 12 to 1500 RPM. And then when you do that, you hold it there for a little bit, and then you let up, and this guy will actually catch on those teeth. Then you can turn your choke off. It'll still rev there until you give it a little bit of gas, let up again, and then you're back down to your normal hot idle. But your choke will still work. So, or at least it does in the early models. You can still have choke when you're at the around 750 RPMs. Your warm idle. But that's something you'll get to know your car a little bit more with that, and then once you do the conversion, you need to adjust your high idle speeds here. Like my 82, I just changed out the carb. Someone had this goofed up bad, and what can happen is over time, depending on how people play with them, people try using this as the main idle speed, which you could, because in its resting position, it goes in almost all the way. It'll actually ride on the shaft, the center shaft here. So then you can shim this out. That's incorrect. That's what we have this screw here for on the back. That guy that's hiding deep down in there. You can barely see it. That Phillips. That's what's used to adjust your idle right here. This up here is only your high speed. But a few things can happen to this. The screw itself can get bent. So it'll be straight here, but just inside it can have like a hook down or a hook up, and when you run it out, it'll drastically change where your high idle comes in at, because you're moving the tip of it up and down, making it catch at different points at different times. Another issue you can have is this part here, because this is, I'll show you, it's bent like this at a 90-degree perpendicular angle. And what can happen is, again, usually just from people monkeying with it, this can get offset like that or that way. You can also be bent up or down, and then again that screws up everything too. So setting this is key. I'll have a video on setting that up in the future, because that's something you do once all this is mounted inside the car and you're all done. But to get back to our choke installation, my rambling is making this a harder process than it seems. So if you're thinking, oh, this might be over my head, it's really not. I'm just very particular and like giving everyone every single piece of info they need. But this plastic guy is what you need to hook up your manual choke to. It directly acts on that choke valve, that choke butterfly valve. Now in the kit, they give you a piece like this. This is what you use here. So, and you can see that the plastic notch there is a lot thinner than the stems of this. So you have a few different options. You can hog out your plastic piece, or what I do is I bend one of the teeth at a 90-degree angle so it sits in there kind of tight, because removing plastic isn't in my bag. So I'll show you here. I'll take this tang and I will simply bend it like I said. There we are. I'll show you what I did here. So I bent it like that. Now it fits in there like a glove. And now all you have to do is just cut off the excess. It says in the instructions that you'll have a little bit of extra sticking out here, and that's why they've put that notch in there, so you know to snip that off if you have to. If you don't have to, leave it there. But for all these carbs, I've had to snip those off every single time. But once you have it in there, you set it in there like that. Don't forget to snip those if you need. I'm not going to, just for the sake of the video, but once you do that, you take your cup, your plastic cup, put that on. It's so easy. I could do it one-handed and with only half an eye. And set it in like that, and then you secure it right away with your metal bracket. Put your bolts in, your rivets, whatever, just something strong, guys. And then you take your little clip here, and then you will pick the smallest or sorry, I should say the lowest notch. It will be the notch closest to this cup. Because this guy, you don't want it pushing, making pressure against the axle or that plastic hub that's in there. You want it to be kind of taut to this cup. So once you've screwed everything down, you can put this in at the bottommost notch. And now you're all done. You can install the carb. And then all you have to do is mount your cable. I had a video on that. And then set this up. This is your actuator. So pretty much all you have to do is you have to set it up. But here's how you do it. So you pick your choke open condition. And then you'll have this right about here. And they give you the hardware in the bag to run a bolt or a machine screw with a nut on it to pinch right here. And pinching right there clamps it around this guy pretty good. Choose where you want to put this carefully. I believe on my other car I had this tang on the outside, and then what I did was I only went in the first notch, and what that did was allowed me to get really good grip here on the back. But when you go to take this out again for any reason, you don't have to fight it past every single one of these notches, which will suck. So again, when your choke is wide open, you move this towards the back, because then when you have it closed, this will be up here towards the end of your cable's travel. And once you do that, you just have to set up the amount of play you want in your cable. Because on your cable, I'll grab a cable for you guys here. On your cable, you'll have your cable. And its resting position should be just a little bit out, because over time its position will change between a few things, between the cable and the shell it's in. That will change. Also, as things like the little brass clip that goes in there that attaches to the end of the inner cable line here changes, or the mount that holds the outer shell a few inches away from your carb. Now all those change minutely over time. So if you set it at the bottom here and you go to push in your choke all the way one day it won't be on full choke. So always leave a little bit left. So this is your closed. It's got a little bit of play, or I should say this is a choke off. So it's got a little bit of play, and then that means that your choke on is out all the way as far as it goes out. Half choke is only halfway, and then no choke is right there. It leaves you with a little bit of play. So then you know that you're there every time. You're not just bottoming out here and then you're left wondering, oh, is my butterfly like half open, or is it shut all the way, or what's going on? And so setting it up is pretty key, and that part is really easy. It's actually kind of fun and enlightening. So is doing this. It's a little tricky if you're doing it inside the carb, or sorry, under the hood inside the car. But if you're taking your carburetor out, it is the perfect time to do this conversion. And it also makes it a whole lot easier between drilling out rivets, tapping holes, modifying this to work with this, and then having it, getting it to install right. Remember, like I said, you don't push this in all the way. You just, you get it kind of snug towards the top here, and then you take your cup, set that over the shaft, and then it makes sure that you have adequate play in all directions. This will be a little tight, and it should be. Like this, I have just under snug, and that's perfect. In my Blue 82, this housing is a little different. This shaft is closer to center, so I could have this really tight, so I know nothing would ever happen to it. But in these 84s on up, keep an eye on that hole. This shaft is offset from the housing circle, so can't have this guy tight. So you need a little bit of play in both directions. So that is key. But otherwise, that's really all there is to it. Any questions, write me. Which Dorman product is this? Let me grab it for you. And they make a few different ones of these. That's their part number for this one, and this is the one with the shorter cable. They have a few different versions of that, and if you go to like O'Reilly's or Advanced Auto, and they have, and if they have two of those, and they both have a different part number, it's because one has a 15-foot cable and the other one has like a 10 or 12. So the shorter one works fine in the Escort, no problem. If you wanted a longer one, that's not an issue. When you go to install these, and if the casing is a little long, you can simply pull out the inner cable as far as you can, and then you can just nip this down to whatever length you want with like a Dremel tool, and then reinsert the inner cable, the actual wire, reinsert that inside the wrap shell, and then you cut the wire down to length. But again, all that you won't really want to do until your choke is mounted up here. Your new choke, your new manual choke is in, and then you have this mounted underneath the dashboard. Mostly because it makes it all easier to work with. But once this is mounted inside the car, it's not a tight circle like this. You'll have a big swooping cable like your throttle cable. So then pulling the entire thing in and out is not an issue if you need to cut it. But otherwise, that's about that. Yeah, again, keep an eye out for my video on the 81 to 83 carburetors. We'll get to that someday. I can't tell you how soon, because because for whatever reason, all my 81 to 83 carburetors are missing this entire choke housing. So I can't really show anything on those until I pull one off another car that actually has this housing here. I don't know why on earth people take this off, and then you're gonna have manual choke that way. You remove this completely, and every time you go to start the car, open up the hood and just you move that butterfly open or closed from the little rod that's left in here. But that's a dumb idea. You lose your idle speed. It's not going to start worth a darn because you have to be inside the car while you're doing this under the hood. So anyhow, video is plenty long enough. So we'll stop there. And best of luck, guys.